I felt my heart stop when I found them in our bed. My wife Emma, tangled in our sheets with Jake, my son's best friend, the boy I'd welcomed into our home, a kid nearly half my age. They didn't even notice me at first. The pain crushed my chest and everything went black. Then impossibly, I woke up 15 years in the past. I was reborn with a second chance. This time I saw all the signs I missed before, her late nights, the secret texts, the way she pulled away from my touch. They thought I was blind, working myself to death while they laughed behind my back. They planned to take everything from me, even my relationship with my son. But this time around, I had a plan. My cold revenge would crush them both. I felt my heart stop when I found them in our bed. My wife Emma, tangled in our sheets with Jake, my son's best friend. The boy I'd welcomed into our home, a kid nearly half my age. They didn't even notice me at first, too caught up in each other to hear the bedroom door open. When Emma finally saw me, her eyes widened not with shame but with annoyance at the interruption. "David," she said, pulling the sheet up as Jake scrambled to find his clothes. "You were supposed to be at work until tonight." The meeting had ended early. I'd rushed home to surprise her with dinner reservations for our anniversary, 20 years of marriage, and this was how she celebrated. The pain in my chest started as a dull ache, then sharpened into something unbearable. I clutched at my shirt, my knees buckling beneath me. Through the haze of agony, I heard Emma's voice, distant and unconcerned. "David, are you okay?" But she wasn't moving toward me. She was grabbing Jake's arm, whispering something to him. My vision tunneled, darkness closing in from all sides. The last thing I saw was my wife's face, her concern directed not at me but at the young man beside her. "Get out of here," she told him. "I'll handle this." I wanted to speak, to rage at her betrayal, but my mouth wouldn't work. The pain consumed everything. As consciousness slipped away, one thought remained. I'd given her everything, and in return she'd made me a fool. Then came nothing. Peaceful, endless nothing, until I opened my eyes. The ceiling above me was familiar, but wrong. The crown molding we'd added during the renovation 10 years ago was missing. The paint was the old eggshell instead of the taupe Emma had insisted on. I turned my head, expecting to see hospital equipment, doctors rushing in. Instead, I saw Emma sleeping peacefully beside me. Young Emma, her face smooth without the subtle signs of aging I'd grown accustomed to. Her hair was longer, the way she'd worn it before Matt was born. I sat up abruptly, my head spinning. The bedroom was our old bedroom in our first house. The one we'd sold 15 years ago when my promotion came through. My hand flew to my chest, searching for pain, for the scar of surgery, finding nothing but smooth skin. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, an ancient model I hadn't seen in years. The date confirmed what I already knew was impossible. I was 15 years in the past. What time is it?" Emma murmured, her hand reaching for me with the casual intimacy we'd lost years ago. I flinched away, the memory of her with Jake still fresh in my mind despite apparently having never happened. "Early," I managed. "Go back to sleep." I stumbled to the bathroom, gripping the sink as I stared at my reflection. Younger, so much younger, the gray at my temples gone, the lines around my eyes softened. I was 30 again, with the knowledge of a man of 45, a man who had died watching his life crumble. The first week was the hardest. Navigating a life I'd already lived, trying to remember details of a past that was now my present. My company was in its early stages, nowhere near the success it had become. Our son Matt was just starting high school, not the college sophomore who had been playing video games downstairs while his mother betrayed us both. And Emma who had not yet betrayed me but would. Emma who smiled at me over breakfast and kissed me goodbye each morning, her betrayal still years away. I watched her carefully, looking for signs. Had it always been there, the capacity for such betrayal? Had I simply been too blind to see it? A month into my new reality, I began to notice things I'd missed the first time. The way Emma's smile didn't quite reach her eyes when I talked about work. How she perked up whenever the conversation turned to her younger colleagues at the design firm. Small things, meaningless on their own, but a pattern when viewed with the wisdom of hindsight. Then came the moment that crystallized my decision. We were hosting a dinner party, something we did often in those days. Emma was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, voice low but excited. "He'll never suspect a thing," she laughed to whoever was on the other end of the line. "David's completely clueless." She hung up when she noticed me in the doorway, slipping her phone into her pocket with a too bright smile. "Just confirming some details for your surprise birthday party," she said smoothly. "Pretend you didn't hear that." I forced a smile and nodded, but something cold settled in my stomach. The party, as I recalled, had indeed been a surprise. But her words, her tone, they echoed in my mind, taking on new meaning with the knowledge of what was to come. That night, as Emma slept beside me, I made my decision. I could try to save our marriage, to change the course of events that had led to her betrayal. I could be more attentive, less focused on work, more of the husband she claimed to want. Or I could prepare. I could build my defenses, secure my future, and ensure that when the inevitable happened, I wouldn't be left broken and humiliated on our bedroom floor. The choice was clear. This wasn't a second chance at love. It was a second chance at life on my terms. The next morning, I kissed Emma goodbye with a renewed sense of purpose. I would give her no reason to suspect that anything had changed. I would play the role of devoted husband, all while meticulously preparing for the day she would betray me, and when that day came, I would be ready. My new strategy required careful planning. If I appeared to change too suddenly, Emma would grow suspicious. So I maintained the workaholic routine she expected, leaving early and returning late. But what I did during those hours changed dramatically. First, I needed financial security. In my previous life, I'd built my marketing firm into a modest success, comfortable but not remarkable. This time, armed with knowledge of market trends and business opportunities, I made different choices. I pursued clients I'd previously overlooked, implemented strategies I'd only later discovered, and avoided the costly mistakes of my first career. While maintaining the appearance of a struggling business owner to Emma, I quietly began moving assets. I established offshore accounts and created a corporate structure that would protect my growing wealth in case of divorce. I remembered how devastated I'd been when Emma's lawyer had threatened to take half of everything I'd built. Never again. Each night when I returned home, I maintained the facade. I complained about difficult clients, discussed cash flow problems, and acted the part of a man just barely keeping his business afloat. Emma, preoccupied with her interior design career and social life, rarely questioned the details. "You work too hard for too little," she would say, her tone a mixture of sympathy and something else, something I now recognized as contempt. "It'll pay off eventually," I would reply, knowing it already was in ways she couldn't imagine. The second part of my strategy involved my son. Matt had been 15 when I died, a sullen teenager who had drifted away from me as I buried myself in work. I'd missed countless games, school events, and everyday moments I could never reclaim. Not this time. Despite my supposedly grueling work schedule, I made time for Matt. I attended his baseball games, helped with homework, and simply talked with him, something we'd rarely done before. At first, he was surprised by the attention, even suspicious. But gradually, our relationship evolved into something I'd always wished for but never achieved. "Dad, can we talk about something?" Matt asked one evening as I drove him home from practice. "Anything," I said, meaning it. "Why are you suddenly so interested in my life? I mean, it's cool and all, but a few months ago you barely knew my schedule." The question stung because it was true. I hesitated, then offered him a version of the truth. I had a wake-up call, realized I was missing what matters most. I glanced at him. "I'm sorry it took me so long." Matt studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Better late than never, I guess." That conversation marked a turning point. Over the following months, our bond strengthened in ways it never had before. Matt began confiding in me, sharing his thoughts, fears, and aspirations. I became the father I should have been the first time, present, engaged, and supportive. Meanwhile, I watched Emma carefully. As my connection with Matt grew stronger, Emma seemed to withdraw further. She spent more time at her design firm, attended more social events without me, and grew increasingly attached to her phone. I began documenting everything. Late-night calls she took in another room, unexplained absences, inconsistencies in her stories about where she'd been. I wasn't yet installing tracking software or hearing investigators. That would come later when Jake entered the picture. For now, I was simply building a record, preparing for what I knew would eventually come. By the time 2 years had passed, my company had quadrupled in value. The struggling business Emma believed I ran was, in reality, expanding rapidly. I had opened satellite offices in 3 cities, acquired 2 smaller agencies, and landed clients that would have been beyond my reach in my previous life, all while maintaining the illusion of modest success at home. Matt was now 17, approaching the age when he would meet Jake in college. My son and I had grown close, our relationship transformed into something built on mutual respect and genuine affection. This, more than anything, gave me satisfaction. No matter what happened with Emma, I had rectified my greatest regret. Emma's behavior had become increasingly erratic. Some days she was overly affectionate, almost desperate in her attempts to connect. Others, she was distant and irritable, finding fault with everything I did or said. I recognized the pattern now, guilt alternating with resentment, though her actual affair with Jake was still years away. "We need to talk about Matt's college fund," she said one evening, catching me off guard. In my previous life, we'd had this conversation much later. "What about it?" I asked carefully. "We're not saving enough. At this rate, he'll have to settle for state school." She gave me a pointed look. "Unless your business suddenly takes off." I suppressed a smile. My business had indeed taken off, but Emma didn't know that. More importantly, I'd already established a separate college fund for Matt, one Emma couldn't access. It was fully funded enough for any university he chose. "I'm doing everything I can," I told her, the picture of a concerned but financially limited father. "Maybe we should cut back on other expenses." Emma's expression hardened. "Like what, David? My design courses, they're an investment in our future." "I was thinking more along the lines of the country club membership or the new car," I replied mildly. "But if you think your courses are unnecessary, they're essential," she snapped. "Some of us are trying to advance our careers, not just tread water." I nodded, appearing chastened while inwardly nodding her reaction. Emma's design courses, 3 a year at most, couldn't possibly account for all the late nights and weekend workshops she claimed to attend. Another inconsistency for my growing file. As Matt's high school graduation approached, I finalized the next phase of my plan. My company now had an appraised value of just over 10 million, none of which Emma knew about. The business she believed I ran was a shell, a front that showed modest profits while the real operation flourished elsewhere. I had secured a network of loyal employees who respected me not just as a boss but as a mentor. My legal team consisted of the best attorneys money could buy, including specialists in divorce law who had helped me structure everything to protect my assets. All that remained was to wait for the catalyst I knew was coming. Jake, the young man who would become my son's college roommate and eventually my wife's lover. The same man who had mockingly called me old man as I lay dying on my bedroom floor. I was ready for him this time. Ready for them both. Matt started college that fall, attending the same university as in my previous life. I helped him move into his dorm, both dreading and anticipating the moment we'd meet his roommate. But when the door opened, it wasn't Jake who greeted us. Instead, a quiet engineering student named Thomas introduced himself. That was unexpected. Had my changes somehow altered this part of the timeline, I spent the drive home pondering the implications. Perhaps Jake would enter our lives through a different path. Perhaps miraculously, we would avoid him altogether. My hope was short-lived. 3 months into Matt's freshman year, he called to tell me about a new friend he'd made. "His name's Jake," Matt said enthusiastically. "He's on the basketball team. Super cool guy, Dad. You'd like him." I gripped the phone tighter. "That's great, son. How did you meet him?" "He's in my business ethics class. We got paired for a project. He's coming home with me for Thanksgiving if that's okay. His parents are in Europe." I forced myself to sound normal. "Of course it's okay, we'll be happy to have him." When I told Emma about our Thanksgiving guest, she seemed unusually interested. "What's he like, this friend of Matt's?" "I haven't met him yet," I reminded her. "Just that he plays basketball and his parents are traveling." Emma nodded, already mentally redecorating the guest room. "I'll make sure everything's perfect for him." Thanksgiving arrived, and with it Jake. He was exactly as I remembered him, tall, athletic, with an easy charm that made everyone around him feel special. Watching him interact with Emma was like witnessing a car crash in slow motion. She laughed too loudly at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke to him, and found endless excuses to be in the same room. Jake, for his part, was respectful toward me, friendly but not overly familiar. There was no hint that he saw Emma as anything but his friend's mother. Not yet. But I recognized the look in his eyes when she wasn't watching, appreciative, assessing. The seeds were already planted. After dinner, when Emma insisted on showing Jake her design portfolio, I took Matt outside for a walk. "You seem tense, Dad," he observed. "Everything okay?" I debated how much to say. In my previous life, Matt had kept his knowledge of Emma and Jake's affair to himself, burdened by a secret too heavy for a teenager to bear. I wouldn't let that happen again. "Just work stress," I said finally. "How are you liking college?" Matt talked enthusiastically about his classes and friends, including Jake. He's had it rough, you know. His parents are barely in his life, always traveling or working. That's why I wanted to bring him home, so he could see what a real family is like. The irony was almost too much to bear. Over the next year, Jake became a regular presence in our home during breaks and occasional weekends. Each time, Emma's behavior grew more transparent. She began mentioning him in casual conversation, repeating things Matt's friend Jake had said as if they were profound insights. She started dressing differently when she knew he would be visiting, more youthful, more revealing. I documented everything while maintaining my oblivious husband routine. Meanwhile, my business continued to thrive and my relationship with Matt grew stronger. I made sure to never criticize Jake to him, knowing it would only push my son away. Instead, I focused on being the father I knew Matt needed. The timeline shifted dramatically during Matt's sophomore year. In my previous life, I hadn't discovered Emma's affair until Matt's junior year. But this time, something changed. Matt called me at my office one Tuesday afternoon, his voice strained. "Dad, can I come talk to you? It's important." "Of course, is everything okay?" There was a long pause. "No. It's really not, and I don't want to talk about it over the phone." An hour later, Matt sat across from me in my office, his face drawn and pale. He looked much older than his 19 years. "I saw something yesterday," he began, not meeting my eyes. "I came home early from a study session. Mom didn't know I was there." My heart raced. This hadn't happened before. Matt had never confronted the affair directly in my previous life. "She was with Jake," Matt continued, his voice breaking. In the kitchen, they were kissing. He finally looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do." I moved around the desk and pulled him into a hug, feeling him shake with suppressed sobs. "This isn't your fault, Matt, not any of it." "I should have told you sooner," he said. "Jake's been texting her for months. I saw it once on his phone but convinced myself it was nothing." He pulled away, wiping his eyes. "What are you going to do?" This was the moment. The divergence from my previous life that could change everything. In the timeline I remembered, Matt had kept his knowledge secret, torn between loyalty to both parents and friendship with Jake. His silence had eaten away at him, damaged him in ways I hadn't understood until it was too late. "I'm going to handle it," I said firmly. "But first, I need you to know something. This betrayal isn't a reflection on you or even on me. Your mother and Jake made their choices. We don't have to let those choices destroy us." Matt nodded slowly. "Are you going to confront them?" "Not yet." I hesitated, then decided to trust him with part of the truth. "I've suspected something for a while. I've been gathering evidence, protecting our finances. When I do confront them, I want to be fully prepared." My son looked at me with new respect. "You knew I had suspicions," I amended. "But I needed to be sure before taking action." Matt was quiet for a moment. "I hate him," he finally said. "I trusted him and he betrayed me too." "Your anger is justified," I told him. "But don't let it consume you. We're going to get through this together." Over the next few weeks, Matt became my ally. He shared information about Jake's schedule, forwarded texts Jake sent him about visiting, and even with my careful guidance, began dropping misleading information to both Jake and Emma about my work schedule and business troubles. With Matt's help, I accelerated my timeline. I hired the best private investigators to document the affair, installed security cameras in our home that captured their indiscretions, and recorded conversations that revealed the depth of their betrayal. One recording particularly stood out. Emma and Jake in our living room thinking they were alone. "What about Matt?" Jake asked. "He's my friend. This will destroy him." Emma's laugh was dismissive. "Matt will be fine. He'll be angry at first, but he'll adjust. Besides, once the divorce is final and we have David's money, we can make it up to him, maybe buy him that car he wants." In my previous life, I'd never known the extent of their callousness. Hearing it now only strengthened my resolve. "I can't believe he still has no idea," Jake said. "The old man's completely clueless." "David only sees what he wants to see," Emma replied. "It's almost sad how blind he is." I played this recording for Matt, watching his face harden as he listened to his mother and former friend discussing us as if we were nothing but obstacles to their happiness. "I'm ready whenever you are, Dad," Matt said when the recording ended. "Let's end this." I waited until Matt's spring break to set my plan in motion. Jake, as expected, had invited himself to stay with us rather than return to his empty family home. Matt, playing his part perfectly, had agreed with apparent enthusiasm. "I can't wait to hang out, man," he told Jake over the phone, his voice betraying none of the disgust he truly felt. "My dad's planning this big family dinner on Friday. He wants to celebrate my grades this semester." had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Every detail was arranged, from the timing of the meal to the evidence I would present. My lawyers were on standby, the divorce papers already drawn up. The financial trap was set, with Emma's name strategically placed on failing investments while my real assets remained protected. Friday evening arrived, and I watched with cold detachment as Emma fussed over the table settings, selecting her best china and crystal for our celebration. She wore a new dress ostensibly for the special family occasion, but I recognized it as the style Jake had once complimented. "This is so nice, David," she said, kissing my cheek with practiced affection. "You've been working so hard lately, I wasn't sure you'd remember Matt's break." "How could I forget?" I smiled, the picture of an oblivious husband. "Family comes first." Matt arrived first, giving me a subtle nod. He knew what was coming but maintained his composure admirably. Then Jake appeared, his athletic frame filling the doorway as Emma welcomed him with a hug that lasted a beat too long. "Thanks for having me again, Mr. Harris," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Matt says you're celebrating his grades. Among other things," I replied mildly. Dinner proceeded with excruciating normalcy. We discussed college sports, Matt's classes, and my supposedly struggling business. Emma kept refilling Jake's wine glass while barely touching her own, her eyes lingering on him whenever she thought I wasn't looking. After dessert, I suggested we move to the living room for coffee. Once everyone was seated, I took my position standing by the fireplace, a spot I'd selected for its commanding view of the room. "Before we finish the evening," I said, my voice steady, "I have an announcement to make." Emma looked up, her expression puzzled but not concerned. Jake shifted slightly in his seat, glancing toward the door as if suddenly aware of a trap. Only Matt remained completely still, his eyes fixed on me. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," I continued, "about loyalty, trust, and family, about the promises we make to each other and what happens when those promises are broken." Emma's smile faltered. "David, what are you talking about?" I ignored her question, instead turning to Jake. "Tell me, Jake, when did it start? Was it last Thanksgiving when Emma showed you her design portfolio in the study for 2 hours? Or was it Christmas when you both disappeared to pick up the forgotten cranberry sauce and returned 45 minutes later?" Jake's face drained of color. "Mr. Harris, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence on top of everything else," I said coldly, then turned back to Emma. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice, that I was so absorbed in work I couldn't see what was happening in my own home?" Emma stood, her hands shaking. "David, you're making a scene over nothing. Jake is Matt's friend. Of course we're friendly with him." "Friendly," I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" I reached for the remote control on the mantel and pressed play. The living room television came to life, displaying security footage of Emma and Jake in this very room 2 weeks earlier, engaged in an embrace that could not possibly be misinterpreted. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Jake stood abruptly, looking from the screen to me with a mixture of defiance and fear. "You've been spying on us," Emma demanded, finding her voice. "What kind of sick, controlling behavior is that?" I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Controlling would have been confronting you months ago, demanding you end it. Instead, I gave you enough rope to hang yourself." I looked at Jake. "Both of you." Jake took a step toward me, his athlete's frame tensing. "Look, old man, this doesn't have to get ugly. Emma and I have feelings for each other, it happens, but we can be adults about this." "Adults," I repeated, "like when you discussed using Matt's college fund for your vacation plans, or when you mocked me as completely clueless while sleeping with my wife in my house." Matt stood then, moving to my side. "I heard everything, Mom. I saw you with him weeks ago. How could you do this? To Dad, to me? Jake was supposed to be my friend." Emma's expression crumpled at the realization that her son knew everything. She reached toward him, but Matt stepped back, his disgust evident. "Matt, honey, it's complicated. Your father and I haven't been happy for years. You'll understand when you're older," she pleaded. "I understand perfectly," Matt replied. "You chose yourself over your family." Emma turned back to me, her shock giving way to calculation. I could almost see the gears turning as she assessed her position and settled on a strategy. "Fine," she said, straightening her shoulders. "This marriage has been over for years anyway. We'll get divorced, split everything 50-50 as required by law, and move on with our lives." She looked at Jake with newfound confidence. "We don't have to hide anymore." Jake shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. I recognized the look. He was realizing that the fantasy of their affair was crashing into the reality of consequences. "About that 50-50 split," I said, You might want to consult your lawyer, or better yet, I'll have mine explain it to you. I picked up a folder from the side table and removed a document, handing it to Emma. Remember this, our prenuptial agreement, which includes a very specific infidelity clause that you insisted we remove but I refused. The one that states you forfeit all claims to my business assets in case of proven adultery. Emma scanned the document, her face paling further. This business is nothing. A struggling agency barely keeping afloat, take it. The house and our savings will be more than enough. I smiled, genuinely amused by her confidence. That struggling agency is now valued at just over $12 million. The house is owned by the business as a corporate asset, and those savings accounts you've been monitoring, decoys, Emma, the real money is elsewhere, legally protected from divorce proceedings. I turned to Jake, whose expression had transformed completely. He was looking at Emma now as if seeing her for the first time, the flush of desire replaced by cold calculation. As for you, I said, I've taken the liberty of informing the dean about your academic ethics violations, submitting other students' work as your own, selling exam answers. My investigators were quite thorough. Your basketball scholarship is under review. Jake's face contorted with rage. You can't do this. You have no proof. I have witnesses, documentation, and bank records, I replied calmly. The same methodical approach I applied to documenting your affair with my wife. Emma looked at Jake, reaching for his hand. It doesn't matter, we have each other. We'll start over. Jake pulled his hand away, taking a step back. Emma, be realistic. I'm 22. I need my degree, my scholarship. I can't support us. But you said you loved me, Emma whispered. You said once David was out of the picture, we'd be together. I said a lot of things, Jake muttered, not meeting her eyes. I watched as the reality of her situation sank in. Emma turned back to me, desperation replacing her earlier confidence. David, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. We can get counseling, rebuild our marriage, she pleaded. There's nothing to rebuild, I said quietly. The divorce papers will be delivered tomorrow. You have 3 days to move out. In the days following that confrontation, our home became a battleground. Emma oscillated between tearful pleas for reconciliation and venomous threats about what her lawyers would do to me. Jake disappeared entirely, blocking both Emma and Matt's numbers and transferring to another university before the investigation into his academic misconduct could conclude. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, exactly as I had planned. Emma's lawyer, an aggressive woman known for securing substantial settlements for wives of wealthy men, grew increasingly frustrated as each financial avenue she pursued led to a dead end. My business assets were protected by ironclad agreements. The offshore accounts remained undiscovered. Even our joint savings, which Emma had assumed would sustain her until the settlement, contained only a fraction of what she expected. This is impossible, her lawyer argued during mediation. No one restructures their entire financial life without cause. He clearly anticipated the divorce and hid assets, which is illegal. My attorney, a silver-haired man with 40 years of experience, simply smiled. My client is a shrewd businessman who has always maintained careful control of his assets. Unless you can prove these structures were created specifically to deprive Mrs. Harris of her fair share, rather than for legitimate business purposes, your argument holds no weight. The mediator nodded thoughtfully. Do you have evidence of when these arrangements were made? Emma's lawyer shuffled through her papers, frustration evident. The earliest restructuring began 3 years ago, but there's a pattern of increasing complexity that suggests Mr. Harris was preparing for this exact scenario. 3 years ago, my attorney repeated. Well before any evidence of Mrs. Harris's affair began, I failed to see how my client could have anticipated something that hadn't yet occurred. What neither of them knew was that I had indeed anticipated it, having lived through it once before. But that wasn't something I could explain in court. The infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement proved decisive. The evidence I had gathered was overwhelming. Security footage, text messages retrieved from cloud backups, witness statements from our housekeeper and neighbors, and even receipts from hotels where Emma and Jake had met, charged to the credit card I had provided for household expenses. Emma's desperate attempt to claim I had been emotionally absent or neglectful fell apart when Matt testified about my consistent presence in his life over the past 3 years. My son spoke with quiet dignity about my attendance at his games, our regular conversations, and the support I had provided throughout his education. My dad was always there for me, Matt told the court, his voice steady. Even when he was busy with work, he made time for what mattered. Emma's lawyer attempted to paint Matt as a confused young man taking sides in his parents' divorce, but his testimony was too specific, too genuine to dismiss. The judge, a woman in her 60s with grown children of her own, nodded approvingly as Matt spoke. By the end of the proceedings, the court's decision aligned precisely with what I had anticipated. Emma received only what the prenuptial agreement stipulated in cases of proven infidelity, a one-time payment equal to 1 year of my documented salary, which, given the artificial depression of my official income, amounted to less than $100,000. She lost all claims to the house, my business, and our investments. As we left the courthouse, Emma approached me one last time, her eyes red from crying but her voice hard with anger. "You planned this," she hissed. "All of it." For years, I looked at her, this woman I had once loved enough to marry twice. "No, Emma, you planned it. I just made sure I wasn't the one who paid the price this time." "This time?" she repeated, confusion momentarily replacing anger. "What does that mean?" I simply shook my head and walked away, Matt by my side. Some truths were too strange to share, even in the aftermath of victory. That evening, Matt and I sat in our living room, the house quieter now without Emma's presence. She had taken only her personal belongings, leaving behind the furniture and artwork she had so carefully selected over the years. I planned to redecorate completely, erasing all traces of our shared life. "Are you okay, Dad?" Matt asked, studying my face carefully. "I will be," I answered honestly. "It's strange. For so long this moment was my goal. Now that it's here, I feel empty." Matt nodded. "I know what you mean. I thought I'd feel better once they both got what they deserved, but I just feel sad for us, for what we lost." He hesitated. "Even a little for Mom. She lost everything." "She lost what she took for granted," I corrected gently. "She'll rebuild her life, people always do." "Like you did?" Matt asked, his perceptiveness sometimes startling me. "After you suspected her affair, you rebuilt everything, your business, our relationship, your whole life." If only he knew how literally true that was. "Yes," I said simply. "Like I did." The weeks following the divorce brought unexpected developments. Jake, having transferred to a smaller college on the opposite coast, attempted to contact Emma repeatedly. She in turn tried to rekindle their relationship now that the obstacle of her marriage was removed. But Jake, faced with the reality of a middle-aged girlfriend with no money and a damaged reputation, quickly lost interest. Emma's design career, once promising, stalled as former clients, many of whom were connected to our social circle, chose other designers. The comfortable lifestyle she had enjoyed as my wife vanished, replaced by a cramped apartment and a job at a retail furniture store that barely covered her expenses. Meanwhile, I found myself adrift in an unexpected way. For years, my focus had been singular: prepare for Emma's betrayal and ensure I wasn't destroyed by it. With that goal accomplished, I faced a future I hadn't fully planned for. My business continued to thrive, requiring less of my direct involvement as my management team handled day-to-day operations. Matt returned to university, where he threw himself into his studies with renewed purpose. I realized, somewhat belatedly, that I had been given something precious. A second chance, not just at revenge, but at life itself. A life no longer defined by betrayal or the anticipation of it. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an email from Emma. It was brief, surprisingly free of recriminations. "I know you won't believe this," she wrote, "but I am truly sorry, not just for the affair, but for taking you for granted all those years. You deserved better. I hope someday you can forgive me, though I understand if you never do." I read the message several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Was this another manipulation, or had Emma genuinely reached a point of self-reflection? In my previous life, I had never lived long enough to see if she would eventually regret her choices. Now I had that knowledge, but found it changed nothing. The damage was done. I closed the email without responding. Perhaps someday I would reach a point where forgiveness felt possible, but that day had not yet arrived. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life in a different way. I reduced my work hours, took up hobbies I had always been interested in but never pursued, and even began dating again cautiously, with no expectation beyond enjoyable companionship. When Matt came home for summer break, he commented on the change. You seem different, Dad, lighter somehow, I smiled. I feel different. For a long time, I was living in reaction to what happened with your mother. Now I'm just living. Matt nodded, understanding in his eyes beyond his years. That's what moving on really looks like, isn't it? Not just getting revenge or justice, but actually leaving it behind. Exactly, I said, realizing he had articulated what I was only beginning to understand myself. Moving on isn't about forgetting, it's about not letting the past control your future. The revenge I had so meticulously planned and executed had been satisfying, but it wasn't healing. The healing came afterward in the quiet moments of rebuilding a life worth living, not just surviving. 6 months after the divorce, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My assistant buzzed through, her voice professional but curious. Mr. Harris, Emma Harris is here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Should I ask her to leave? I paused, considering my options. I hadn't seen Emma since the courthouse, hadn't responded to her email, had deliberately avoided any place I thought she might be. Send her in, I said finally. Whatever she wanted, I was strong enough to face it now. Emma looked different. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a simple blouse and jeans. She'd cut her hair short, and there was a humility in her posture I'd never seen before. Thank you for seeing me, she said, remaining standing even when I gestured to a chair. I won't take much of your time. What can I do for you, Emma? I kept my voice neutral, neither warm nor cold. I came to return this. She placed a small velvet box on my desk. It was your grandmother's. I know how much it meant to your family. I should have given it back sooner. I opened the box to find my grandmother's sapphire ring, the one I'd given Emma on our 10th anniversary. In my previous life, she'd been wearing it when I died. I hadn't even thought to ask for it during the divorce. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Emma nodded, then took a deep breath. I also wanted to tell you that I'm moving. Fresh start in Chicago. My sister lives there. I wish you well, I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. She studied my face, searching for something. You've changed, David. There's something different about you, something that started even before you found out about Jake. She hesitated. It's like you became a different person a few years ago, more focused, more present with Matt, less absorbed in work even though your business grew. I tensed slightly. She was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. People change, I said simply. Not like that, not so completely. She shook her head. It was like one day you just knew things would go wrong between us, knew exactly what to do to protect yourself. I remained silent, unwilling to lie but unable to tell the truth. Emma sighed. Jake left me as soon as he realized there was no money. Did you know that? I suspected he would. You knew exactly what kind of man he was. She looked down at her hands. Better than I did. You saw what you wanted to see, I said, not unkindly. Yes, she met my eyes again. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, why I did what I did. I was unhappy, felt invisible, took you for granted, but none of that excuses betraying you, betraying Matt. I nodded, acknowledging her apology without accepting it. I won't ask for your forgiveness, she continued. I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that I understand what I threw away now. She turned to leave, then paused. Be happy, David, you deserve that. After she left, I sat holding my grandmother's ring, thinking about second chances and redemption. Emma was trying to rebuild her life just as I had rebuilt mine. I couldn't forgive her yet, but perhaps someday. 2 years passed. My business continued to thrive, though I'd stepped back from day-to-day operations to focus on mentoring young entrepreneurs, something I found unexpectedly fulfilling. Matt graduated with honors and was considering law school. We spoke weekly, our relationship stronger than ever. I dated occasionally but never felt compelled to pursue anything serious until I met Claire at a charity event. She was a pediatric surgeon, widowed young, with a quiet confidence and gentle humor that drew me in immediately. Unlike Emma, who had always needed to be the center of attention, Claire was comfortable in her own skin, secure in her accomplishments. We took things slowly, both of us cautious after past heartbreak. When I finally told her about Emma's betrayal, Claire listened without judgment. You rebuilt your life after that kind of devastation, she said. That takes incredible strength. If only she knew the whole story. But there was one person I felt might be ready to hear it. Matt came home for a weekend visit, and we spent an evening on the back deck talking as the sun set. He was 23 now, the same age I'd been when I first married Emma, but he possessed a wisdom I hadn't acquired until much later. Dad, can I ask you something personal? He said, turning his beer bottle in his hands. Anything. After everything with Mom and Jake, how did you move forward so completely? Most people would have been bitter, suspicious of everyone. I looked at my son, considered the man he'd become, and made a decision. What if I told you something impossible? I said carefully. Something you'd think was crazy. Matt raised an eyebrow. Try me. I lived all of this before, I said simply. Your mother's affair, the betrayal, all of it. But in that life, I didn't discover the affair until it was too late. I had a heart attack when I found them together and I died. Matt stared at me, waiting for the punchline. When none came, he set his beer down. Dad, what are you saying? I woke up 15 years in the past in my younger body with complete knowledge of what would happen. That's how I was able to prepare to protect us both. I'd already lived through losing everything once. Matt was silent for a long moment, processing. That's not possible, he finally said, but his tone was uncertain. I know how it sounds, but think about it. How else could I have known exactly what would happen, exactly how to counter it? Why else would I have changed so dramatically, becoming the father I should have been the first time? Matt's expression shifted from skepticism to wonder as he considered the evidence. The timing of your business decisions, always a step ahead of the market. How you knew mom would eventually betray you. The way you prepared financially, legally. He looked at me with new eyes. You really died? I nodded. Heart attack right there in our bedroom when I found them together. Emma was more concerned with getting Jake out safely than helping me. That's why you were never angry even when you confronted them, Matt said slowly. You'd already processed it all. I had years to prepare, to accept what was coming and plan my response. Matt shook his head in amazement. I don't know if I believe in reincarnation or time travel or whatever this is, but I believe you believe it. And honestly, it explains a lot. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Finally, Matt spoke again. So what now? You've had your revenge, rebuilt your life. What's next in this second chance? I smiled, thinking of Claire, of the life stretching before me, a life I'd never experienced before, full of new possibilities. That's the beauty of it, I said. I don't know. From here on out, it's uncharted territory. 3 years later, I stood with Matt outside the small chapel where he would marry Stephanie, the brilliant young architect he'd met during his final year of law school. Claire waited inside, now my wife of 6 months, having brought joy back into my life in ways I'd never anticipated. Nervous? I asked, straightening Matt's tie. Not at all, he said with confidence. When you know, you know. I nodded, remembering feeling the same certainty when I first married Emma, before life and choices had taken us down different paths. As if sensing my thoughts, Matt said, I invited Mom, I hope that's okay. Of course it is, I assured him. It's your day. Inside, I spotted Emma sitting quietly near the back, looking elegant but subdued. She'd rebuilt her life in Chicago, started a small interior design business that was doing well. He'd spoken briefly at Matt's law school graduation, the awkwardness between us fading into something like peace. After the ceremony at the reception, Emma approached Claire and me. There was no tension in her smile as she congratulated us on our recent marriage. You look happy, David, she said sincerely. Both of you. We are, Claire replied, squeezing my hand. Emma nodded, something like relief in her eyes. Good, that's as it should be. Later, as Claire danced with her brother, Emma came to stand beside me. Do you ever think about what might have happened if things had been different between us? She asked quietly. I thought about my first life, the years of marriage that had ended in betrayal and death. I thought about the second chance I'd been given and how I'd used it to create a better outcome for myself and for Matt. I did once, I admitted. But I've learned that looking backward too much prevents you from seeing what's right in front of you. Emma smiled sadly. Wise words. I wish I'd understood that sooner. As she walked away, I watched Matt dancing with Stephanie, their faces glowing with the special joy of new beginnings. I thought about the impossible journey that had brought me here: death and rebirth, revenge and redemption, loss and love. My grandmother's sapphire ring now rested on Claire's finger, a symbol not just of our commitment, but of the continuity of life, of second chances and new beginnings. I'd been given the rarest of gifts, the opportunity to rewrite my story, to correct the mistakes of a lifetime, and while the path had been painful, the outcome was worth every moment. I'd lost a wife who never truly loved me but gained a partner who matched me in every way that mattered. I'd strengthened my relationship with my son, built a business that fulfilled me, and found peace I'd never known possible. As Claire returned to my side, slipping her hand into mine with easy affection, I realized that the true revenge wasn't in Emma's downfall or Jake's disgrace. It was in this: living well, loving deeply, and embracing each day of this second life as the gift it truly was.